Hi, everybody. Welcome today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Hala Alawi, Atmosphere Press's Book Publicity and Events Manager. Thank you so much for joining us for a free live event, How to Publish Your Book in 2025, an action plan and Q&A with Dr. Kyle McCord. In this live event, you'll learn how you can publish your book as soon as 2025. Dr. McCord will walk you through how to create your action plan so you can take your manuscript from a document on your computer to a book on bookstore shelves. And we'll talk about how finding the right collaborators can help you achieve that goal. You'll also have the opportunity for Dr. McCord to answer your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So at any time during the event, starting as soon as now, feel free to use that box. And you can also check there for the answered tab so you can see answers to questions that have already been posed. We want your author experience to be tailored to you so you can enjoy the process while you're creating the best possible version of your book. This is what we're about here at Atmosphere Press. Founded in 2015 by Nick Courtwright, an author and PhD in literature, Atmosphere Press is the only publisher who puts rewarding and meaningful author experiences above all else. We've published more than 1,200 books. Our authors have won dozens of awards, and our books have reached the hands of tens of thousands of readers. Visit atmospherepress.com to learn more about how you can have a rewarding and meaningful author experience of your own, as well as to submit your manuscript for review. And if you mention this event in the first line of your cover letter, we will expedite the process of reviewing your submission. With all of that, I'm excited to introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Kyle McCord is the author of 8 books, including National Poetry Series finalist Magpies in the Valley of Oleanders and the novel Reunion of the Good Weather Suicide Cult. He has work featured or forthcoming in the Harvard Review, the Kenyon Review, and elsewhere. He's received grants or awards from the Academy of American Poets, the Vermont Studio Center, and the Baltic Writing Residency. Kyle holds an MFA from University of Massachusetts Amherst and a PhD from the University of North Texas. He served as associate poetry editor of The Nation and currently serves as executive editor of Goldwake Press and acquisitions director for Atmosphere Press. Kyle, take it away.
Everyone, and Hala, thank you for the lovely introduction. It's wonderful to get to share with all of you today, and I'm so glad that you're here. So I was contemplating what I was going to talk about today, and I was reminded of a peculiarity about me as a person. And believe me, there are many, but one of them is that I love checking things off a list. Whenever I have a big project or something that needs to get done, I want to create a checklist of everything that needs to get done along the way, because otherwise what happens is the task often becomes too overwhelming. It's too nebulous, too big. But if I have discrete steps that I can follow, it becomes much easier to figure out where I need to go next. Okay, well, I did that thing. Now I need to do this thing. Now I need to do this thing. When I used to teach creative writing on the college level, I always had students start with 3 questions. What is this asking you to do? What steps do you need to take to start answering? And what would an excellent response look like? Those 3 questions are still great for any task that you're going to do. And particularly with getting your book published by 2025, you definitely want to have a clear process. And so what we've come up with is a 5-step process to get you from start to finish. And again, I would welcome taking notes or anything like that, or you can go back through this video and check out what those 5 steps might be. So the first thing that we're going to think about is determine your goals. And we can break that down into a fairly straightforward question, which is, what do you want as specifically as possible? The hallmark of good writing is the ability to be specific. So one of the first things we want to consider is what is achievable, meaning that if this is your very first book, it's fairly unlikely and I fairly actually is a little bit of a weak word. It's highly unlikely that your book is going to be picked up by a huge publisher, get a multi-million dollar advance, and become a Netflix special, right? For 99.99999, and I include myself in this percent of us, that's just not a reality, right? And so what we want to consider is our own level of experience and engagement with the writing community and how that might translate into the kind of book success that we're looking for. We also want to consider the book's genre, its audience, and your exposure as a writer. What do I mean by that is some genres are going to be more are going to have a wider appeal than others, right? Memoir, as much as I love memoir, doesn't always have the same reach that something like YA might have. Something like some forms of fiction are definitely more popular than others. So we want to modulate kind of based on that. And then one of the things we want to consider is limitations and expectations with in your own life. And look, I don't bring this step up to say, oh, your book can't be successful or something like that, not even remotely. But I do want to consider what success means. And there is a pretty wide gulf between the Netflix special, right? And the huge adaptation to every language, and the book published and in a reader's hands. And I think the second one that I've mentioned has infinitely more value than just a dream in one's head. Let's put it. So we would also want to consider limitations and expectations. How much energy and time do you have to put this book in front of editors, in front of every different contest in the country? What are the funds you have to do that? What's the kind of energy you have to do that? What's your enthusiasm for that? And the answer to that doesn't have to be limitless, right? We have choices that don't involve, uh, again, that kind of really aggressive push, right? So again, what we're doing first is determining what our goals are and how those are connected with the inherent qualities of our book. Our second step is to start getting the book ready for prime time. Okay, so prepare your manuscript. And so there's a number of things along the way, all of which are exciting, and that lead towards publication of the book. If you've never heard this term before, it's one you want to get familiar with, which is beta readers. Beta readers are folks who are reading your book with the idea that you would like feedback about the book. All of us as writers have people who are enthusiastic. Maybe it's the person who's like always like, man, I can't wait to read your book. I'd love to read your book. Hey, would you like to be behind the scenes and be one of my early readers? And then you can, get even more enjoyment out of the final product. And generally with beta readers, one of the things I will tell you is you want to encourage them to get back to you relatively quickly, right? It doesn't help to have a beta reader who is going to get back to you in 4 to 5 months if you know you're going to have significantly revised the book by then. Additionally, you'll want to start doing a proofing of your book. Now, it could be the case that you have all of the skills to get that done, meaning that you have excellent grammar and you have all sorts of resources that you are calling upon in order to get that done. It could also be that you have an outside person that helps you with that in some way. And again, beta readers often do a fair bit of that as well. Not necessarily that they're going to proof the whole book, but they might say, "Oh, I notice you're missing an article on this third page," or something like that. Additionally, we want to prepare what's called a cover letter. Cover letter is a short written letter. I emphasize the word short, right? That just introduces your book, introduces you as a reader. And one of the things you can do is you can just Google cover letter, right, for finished manuscripts. And there will be some samples for you to take a look at. Absolutely. Right. Additionally, one of the things to tell you is that we do have a blog that has lots of advice on materials like this that you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to check out. Those kinds of prep materials are something that is fairly standardized. So it's great to have some resources to know what people have already created so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our third step is we're going to research the best avenue for success for our book. So far what we've done is figured out what our goals are and then started taking some steps to get the book ready for prime time. Now we are going to survey our options, right? Um, so this is where we start dreaming a little bit, right? And we say, okay, where would we love to put this book out with? Um, One of the things I would say is places like Trustpilot or the Better Business Bureau are great places to look to see who has credibility and engagement with the community. Again, also, we want to match that with some of our goals from our very first step, right? What I would say is look at the books you love from similar genres. Like who's putting those books out? Which presses get the best reviews from credible sources? And one of the things I would say is this: don't be blinded by, oh, this press, they have uh of this very, it's great to look at what other presses have done, but if you're just picking some place because you're like, oh, there's a famous author who has a book there, and yeah, and it's perfectly possible that they had a really rough experience, right? We hear all the time about traditional presses that don't treat their writers properly. We also do hear all about, sort of pseudo hybrid publishers that look a little bit more like vanity presses that also don't treat their writers right. And so we want to look at what are the kind of video reviews that are out there. Those are especially credible. What sort of feedback are they getting from authors who really want that, right? And then we want to look at what sort of support these presses offer. Will they be excited about you and your work? And ultimately, are they going to be the kind of engagement that you are going to really find meaningful, right? Additionally, if a press has like thousands and thousands of authors, or maybe alternatively, if you are the youngest, least experienced member of that press, right? Either of those being true, it's perfectly possible you might get a fairly uneven experience, right? I talk to people all the time who are like, oh, I was on this really big press and I wasn't one of the 99 point, a 90, I was one of the 99.6% of people or whatever it is who have a book that does well, but maybe doesn't do amazingly. And so I was kind of, dropped by the side of the road, so to speak, right? That's not what you're looking for either. So again, what you want to do is really look up and get educated about the presses that are out there. Um, then we want to move forward with step 4, which is securing our collaborators. The question is, who's going to be your publishing partner? And it shouldn't be who is going to be your publishing overlord or who is going to be in charge of your project. That I really emphasize that you should be the person who fundamentally is partnering with the press, not them taking the product from you and remolding into whatever they want and then repackaging it as their own. I think that's good proprietorship of intellectual property. Let's put it that way. So once you've decided on some presses that you think will be a good fit, review their submission guidelines, find out how they want the book to be submitted. I will also tell you that I have a strong bias against places that have really onerous submission guidelines, really challenging submission guidelines. The reason is because it usually indicates that they're not thinking about their actual they're not thinking about the actual author. They're thinking about what barriers do we need to put in place to make sure we don't have to read that many manuscripts. I don't think that's a particularly good faith way to engage with the writing community. So I would look at submission guidelines and see what presses you can submit to that really fit within those parameters. Then prepare a final version of your manuscript based on good guidelines. And that means, again, I said, generally you don't want to have to tailor it too much for any given press. But you certainly, if presses are asking for something in particular, you do want to have that. Then from there, and this is a big time gap in between those two, or it can be a big time gap. Once you start hearing back from presses, and bear in mind, this is something we have to steel ourselves for. We're going to get told some no's. We are. It's going to happen. There is no writer who I've ever met who only gets yeses, right? And that's a good thing because it tells us where the heat is, right? Where the connection is, what are the other authors, other presses, other editors who really think and feel like us. But once you get a yes, even just one, that is a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's worth being proud of right in that moment. And once we have that kind of yes, we're going to look at the contract offers, and that brings us into number 5, which is prepare a plan with your chosen publisher, right? And so this is where we look at what the journey is going to be like. I think too often writers into the process. They say, "Oh, I'm really enthusiastic." That's great. Want to be enthusiastic? Let's take a look at the journey that you're going to be on. So when you look at a contract, there are a few things that you want to be sure of. One, that you have autonomy. Do you have final say over features of the book itself, including the cover, interior layout, formatting of the book, marketing decisions? Right now, you don't want like full and absolute control over everything. Trust me, you don't. You want the expertise of the press to guide you. However, you don't want to have no stop button, right, in case there is some kind of issue. It's one of the things that I see a lot in contracts is that there isn't the real autonomy or control that an author is looking for. It is one of the things that I will tell you, we guarantee an atmosphere, and it's one of the reasons that we built the press the way we did. Secondly, we want to consider, are you going to be the beneficiary of your own success? What I mean by that is when you look at the actual contract, how much of the return from your book are you getting? If it's a traditional press, it's perfectly possible that you're getting like 50 cents a book, which, it doesn't really add up to much, right? And so, you don't have a lot of really real strong motivation to push the book, right? Which is not a great thing. You want to be rewarded for the work that you do, and you want to be the beneficiary of your own success. So we really want to be certain that there is a fair return on every book sold. Um, and I would say the last bit I would think about um, is you want to have, again, you want to be the beneficiary of your own success. You want to have autonomy. You also want to take a look, and we've done a number of videos on this that you're welcome to go back and check out about keeping your rights and keeping your autonomy. But you want to make sure that you have at least some rights to the book, even if there's things that you have to give up, right? You want to find out what the exchange is for those, right? Because there always is a trade. I guarantee you that no matter how generous a press is, there's going to be some kind of trade-off. But once you've got all those check marks in place, and I would say also one sort of final note about this is when you read the contract, is it written in language that you understand? Is it purposefully written in something that appears to be kind of legalese? And part of the challenge there is that I know from working with presses that I trust and from writing contracts for authors that you can choose to write the contract more clearly, right? A press that writes it in a more convoluted or complicated way, it's not to say that there can't be things that you're like, okay, I'm not entirely sure about this and I want to ask. That's good. There will be things like that. However, if you read it and you're like, this feels like it was written by a lawyer, and it feels like it isn't consciously trying to really meet me where I'm at, it's a pretty sure sign that what you have there is a contract that may be convoluted for reasons that less ethical, right? And so that's something you want to watch for too. But look, those are what we hope are not the major situations that you encounter in this journey. And so once you have that, that publisher that you want to work with, that you trust, that has laid everything out for you clearly and has a good plan that you believe in and where you both would be the beneficiaries, but specifically you as the writer, then it's time to start moving forward and making your dream a reality. And so those are the steps from point A to point B, the 5 things that I've laid out that are really going to help you get your book from the, Word document to actual published book someone's holding in their hands, right? So again, just walk back through them, determine your goals. So we want to figure out what you want, prepare your manuscript, make sure it's ready for prime time. We've got all those different steps that we want to take along the way there. We're going to find our best avenue for success, which means we want to survey our options. We want to look at Trustpilot. We want to look at the Better Business Bureau. We want to look at what authors actually say about the presses they work with. We want to secure our collaborators, figure out who our publishing partners are going to be, and then we're going to prepare a plan for your chosen. There's so many P's in this, guys. Prepare a plan for your chosen publisher, and we're going to figure out, are you ready for the journey? And if you're watching this, I bet you probably are, or you have a good idea of where you want to be, and we would love to help with it. All right, so I think, Hayla, we might have some questions here.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those. So thank you first for kind of starting us off with all those insights. That alliteration was great. And we do have time for our audience Q&A now. So if anyone has additional questions, please feel free to keep putting those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to do our best to get to as many as we can right now. To start us off, Kyle, this question is, can you talk about the pros and cons of hybrid publishing and if a certain way of publishing is best for a genre such as literary fiction?
Sure. I will not pretend not to be an advocate for certain modes of publication, right? I will tell you that I've published 7 books traditionally, and I published my novel with Atmosphere, right? My view is that, um, and this comes from years of experience of working with presses, that traditional publishing, you very much get what you pay for. That's my view, right? Which is you do not have an input to get the process started other than your time and energy. And understand your time and energy has value. And the process of shopping around to find a press takes a very long time. I would say that when I would talk to people and they'd say, oh, well, it only took me a year to publish my book. That's surprising. I know a lot of people who it's 3 to 4 years to get your book out, and that's assuming that you find the right place. And that's also after spending lots of money sending to contests and all those kinds of things. Um, if you are so if when thinking about traditional publishing, I my view is that there isn't anything wrong with it if you're willing to pay that input. I am not. And the reason I'm not is because oftentimes someone very little is grabbing at me to do this or that or the other. Or alternatively, the dog needs to be let out. Or alternatively, there's 70 other things that I need to get done. And I don't want to spend all that time getting interested in a press that has a 0.1% chance of being interested in me. Instead, what I want to do is I want to work with somewhere that has a record that I believe in, that has books out that are making significant waves in the world, that is really um, going to push my work out in a significant way, in a verifiable way that I can see, right? And so that also means that self-publishing isn't necessarily for me either. Do you think finding a traditional publisher is a lot of work? Boy, oh boy, you aren't going to believe what doing self-publishing actually takes, because you need to find a great editor, you need to find a great cover designer, you need to find a great interior designer. You then need to find a marketing team that's going to get behind you. And by the way, your point person, you're looking at them. It's you. So when you're looking in the mirror, I guess, right? It's you, right? And so ultimately, I think that's sort of it. In terms of genre, here's what I'll tell you. Atmosphere, we publish children's literature, we publish, speculative fiction, we publish memoir, we publish, you name it, right? Across the board, we have a huge number of genres that we work with. And we have experts in each of those things, which is wonderful. Um, I think there are some, let's put it this way, genres where there are more forward thinkers, right? In terms of, like, I think, for example, of speculative fiction or fantasy as being places where a lot more people have chosen, like, the self-publishing route. Or literary fiction is where most people, have chosen a traditional publisher. But all of that's changing. All of that is changing. And I think that generally speaking, we should be changing and updating our notions with it and looking at empirically who has the offer that guarantees exposure, that guarantees all of this, that they're going to do all the steps along the way in a thoughtful and considered way that really, is going to benefit us as writers.
Thanks, Kyle. Another question for you. How much of your manuscript has to be done before submitting to Atmosphere? And once it is submitted, how much editing help do authors get? And do authors keep their rights?
I'm going to start with the last question first. Um, Absolutely, you keep your. Now, this is a novelty within the writing, which is, I actually recently looked at other contracts that had been offered to um, a couple different writers, and I was astonished because I knew that what Atmosphere was doing was novel. I didn't realize how novel it actually was. Um, a lot of places will demand things like first American serial, translation rights, reprinting rights, etc. Right? Atmosphere is one of the only presses out there that says you get to keep autonomy, you get to keep your rights, you get to keep 90% of the proceeds. That's a very attractive offer, and I say that as someone who took that offer myself. Um, in terms of how much of the manuscript needs to be complete, so one of my jobs as the director of acquisitions is to talk directly with authors who are working through these steps that we've talked about. Generally speaking, you can really be at any stage of the process. The optimal time to get a hold of us is when you're either all the way there, you finish the book, or alternatively, you're maybe 75 to 80% of the way there, right? But if you are at the beginning stages and you're like, I'd like to really have my publisher lined up beforehand, absolutely doable, right? What we would need to see is we want to see a sample and a synopsis and a little bit of that stuff, right? Because we're not going to pick blindly. We want to make sure that this is a book that's a good fit for us. Additionally, Atmosphere is a selective publisher. We get lots and lots of submissions, and we'd love to see yours, right? See exactly what you're working with. Also, once you start working with us, this is one really exciting thing. If you're like, man, I know my book isn't perfect, awesome, time to send it over, right? Um, so if you have a book where you say, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with this or that or the other, that's okay. You don't have to be all the way there.
Great. Another question is, should I try to get an agent or should I just hybrid publish?
Just thinking about that, Halo. I am I talk to agents very regularly, and I think that often they are very good-hearted people who genuinely do enjoy publishing. However, I will tell you that I think that the idea of the agent gets really elevated in literary culture in a way that it doesn't need to be. I literally went to a conference where you could go and talk to an agent and they brought you up in an elevator, and then somebody stood there and waited with you before taking you away. It was like a prison visit, right? And uh, I thought that was very strange because literary agents are fundamentally people who act as intermediaries for writers, and that can be good, other than they take a fairly substantial chunk of what you make. Nobody is doing that out of the goodness of their heart. And oftentimes, literary agents either aren't interested in the work you're doing, or they, even worse, they might take you on and then hold out for a deal that they want, or just bail on you, right? I think that that I'm a big believer in transparency. The fewer barriers there are between the press and the author, I think that's a good thing. And so my view is I can say I have never submitted to agents. And it's not something that I would pursue. Again, I don't think that they are ill-willed within the writing community or anything like that. I just think that the most engaged and honest relationships tend to be directly between the author and the press.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, different perspectives, like you said, but I think there's a lot of merit to that kind of idea of how much ownership and collaboration do you want? Moving right along to the next question. This person says, I was already offered a contract by Atmosphere, but chose to self-publish on Amazon to get some reviews. The manuscript had been proofed and prepared for publication and looks great. I know nothing about promotion, so the ebook has sold very sparsely. Now I'm rethinking my approach. What are your thoughts?
Um, I think no matter, I'll put it this way. To anyone who is willing to publish in the world, it's a brave move. Absolutely. It's a brave move, and I applaud that. I think that you've sometimes when we do something like that, we see the shortcomings of that possible approach. And I think in this possible approach, right, it sounds like um, this is a person who said, okay, I think I can do these steps along the way. But it turns out I got this one thing, being a promoter, that I'm not necessarily great at, right? We would be absolutely willing to take to work with you on the project, right? We would want to see all the materials you have, right? But we can help you make this book make a bigger splash, right? And what we would do is we have a proven process that gets you from point A to point B, that we would draw the book through without creating, redundancies in the work that you've already done. And what you'd end up with is the best possible version of your book that also can get things like guaranteed reviews, NetGalley campaign, Goodreads campaign, that we can get you a Kirkus review. We can submit the book to major, review sites, and let's put it this way. We've had books that have sold tens of thousands of copies. We've had books that have gotten major reviews, and LA Review of Books, gotten mentions, bigger places, and places like New York Times, right? So absolutely, we'd love to take a look.
Great. Thank you, Kyle. The next question. I don't have money to publish. What else does Atmosphere do?
Absolutely. And I know this is a reality for plenty of folks. First of all, I will tell you this, which is if it's the case that you say, I really want to publish, I have very limited revenue, one of the things we are always willing to do is talk about a payment plan. Payment plan is where maybe you would pay $200 and then you'd add to it each month. As soon as we got to that first 1/3, we could get everything rolling. Let's say that that's just not a possibility for you. We certainly have things like we have a writing residency that you can absolutely apply for, the Playa Flamingo. We also have a potential publisher quiz that might be really useful to you. We have our free interview series. We have a blog archive with hundreds of articles. I even hear that we might have some recordings of other webinars that you could check out, right? That would give you some great advice about publishing, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, so definitely be sure to check out the website for more information on those opportunities. In the meantime, another question for you, Kyle. Why should someone publish with Atmosphere and not a different hybrid publisher?
Um, I think if you go back, one of the things you'll see, and look, in the famous words of LeVar Burton, you don't have to take my word for it, right? Go take a look at some of the other contracts offered. And I say this as someone who routinely does look at these. What you're going to notice is there is a qualitative distinction in terms of a couple of things. One, again, rights. Two, autonomy. And three, um, I would describe it as possibility, which is that a lot of presses, hybrid presses, will say, oh, yeah, we can put your book out for X dollars, right? And it'll be some really low price. I guarantee you are getting what you pay for, right? That is going to be a press that is going to have limited reach, and your dollars are not going further there, or something like that. I know that because I know the bottom line of what it takes for us to publish a book right. It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. And if someone says, "Oh, well, we can," if you give us $1,000, we'll publish your book. I guarantee you can do much better things with that revenue. Additionally, again, I think that fundamentally take a close look at the contract, find out what those things mean. We'll take the Pepsi challenge on this, right? Take a look, make sure things look right, and make sure that the kinds of guarantees that we've talked about, again, those three guarantees, autonomy, rights, and then I said possibility. The other way to think about it too is what is your possible return on? Are you going to be the beneficiary of success? I do not believe that you will find a, a competitor in our price range who's going to honestly come close to that. I don't think that. I know that.
Yes, definitely. And just one more question that we have time for today, Kyle. This person says, thank you for underscoring the importance of finding a publisher that sees things through a writer's eyes and therefore is likely to lead with empathy. From what you've shared, I've gleaned that some red flags might be overly complicated contract language, particularly onerous submission requirements. So, in that vein, is there anything else you've come across that might be another potential red flag?
Question. I would say that I will give you two other things that I think. One of which is when you read the submission requirements, do they seem excited about you? Right? Or is it, here's the hoops you need to jump through, right? If you are reading submission requirements and they're more about prohibition than they are about acceptance, it's a pretty sure sign that you're dealing with a press that isn't super happy or super excited to be working with you. And even if you think your book is amazing, that's not the kind of place I'd want to be. Secondly, um, transparency. This is the other thing that I would say. Can you see who you're going to be working with? Meaning, when you go and look at the masthead, can you look at the masthead? Is it evident that there are people along the way? When you talk to whoever the representative is for the company, do they say, you'll be working with blank and blank and blank? Or do they say, oh, you'll be working vaguely with this person? Or is it like, here's Ronaldo, and here's Cam, and here's Kayla? Are there real people, real writers, real experts behind the process? Because that's what you want. If you are going to get your book into the world in a meaningful way, I think more than anything, what you want is to have a team of people who fundamentally cares about your book, who is going to treat you with the respect and engagement that you as a writer deserve. And fundamentally, that is going to look at the possibility of publishing your book in 2025 with enthusiasm and with professionalism. And I think those two characteristics really make the difference.
All right. Thank you so much, Kyle. That is all the questions we have time for today. But if you have a question that wasn't answered, please do check out Atmosphere Press's YouTube channel for previous live sessions with Kyle. You can get access to more of his wisdom and experience there. That being said, thank you again so much to Dr. Kyle McCord for sharing your experiences, your time, as I said, your wisdom today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being here and for sharing your thoughtful questions. If you're a writer looking for a rewarding and meaningful publishing experience, check out the links in the chat. I'm going to put a few of them in there one more time for you, and visit us at atmospherepress.com. There you can sign up for our email newsletter, browse our new and forthcoming releases, meet the humans behind Atmosphere Press that Kyle mentioned, check out our testimonials, and of course, submit your manuscript. Remember that if you mention this event in the first line of your cover letter, we will expedite the review process for your submission. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, have a great rest of your week, everyone.